In this game, we have the great Paul Benkő. Paul Charles Benkő was born in Amiens, France, to Hungarian parents who were there vacationing. Born July 15th, 1928, he learned chess from his father at age 10. He won the Hungarian Chess Championship in 1948. He became an international master in 1950. He defected to the United States October 1957. In 1958, he became a grandmaster, the same time Bobby did, at Portoros. Paul Benkő qualified to play at Palma de Mallorca in 1970, but gave up his seat to Bobby Fischer, who went on to win that by 3.5 points, went on to sweep the candidates matches, and went on to win the World Championship against Boris Spassky. So, in a very real sense, were it not for Paul Benkő, Bobby Fischer would not have won the World Championship, at least not that year. He starts the game with d4, and of course, an Anglo-Indian defense, or not an Anglo-Indian starts with c4. I don't know why I was thinking Anglo-Indian. c4, g6 is a King's Indian. g3, we're going to have a fianchetto variation after bishop g7, bishop g2. Castles and knight c3. Pawn c5. By the way, this is the queen's knight variation. e3, knight c6, king's knight e2, d6. Benkő castles, bishop d7, b3, rook b8, bishop b2, a6. This is the best and most commonly played move, but in case you were wondering, pawn takes pawn has been tried a couple of times, but not with any real success. After e takes and then a6. Bobby, of course, playing the best move here. D takes c5, D takes c5, knight a4. Of course, that threatens the c-man, but frowned upon by the bot. The bot calling for the king's knight to go to f4. I thought, you should also consider rook c1. This would be a very thematic move. Let's see what we get. A check mark. Knight a4 was Paul Benkő's choice. b6 defends. Now knight f4 is played. Eval bar has a slightest razor's edge in white's favor here. Knight a5, bishop e5. Actually liked queen c2 here, by the way, myself. Getting out of, I get a star for that, getting out of the black queen's line of fire and preparing to move the queen's rook in the black queen's line of fire. My idea is sound according to the bot. Bishop e5 also sound according to the bot. Bobby with rook c8. Yeah, bishop takes knight is quite intriguing here. That would take some real... Wow. The bot calling for this, and the knight will come to d7, whether white plays bishop takes rook or pawn takes bishop. So if bishop takes rook, knight d7, or if pawn takes bishop, knight d7. Bobby didn't consider that. Instead, he played rook c8. Now queen c2 is played. And now bishop takes pawn is played. Now pawn takes the bishop, and of course, as predicted, knight d7. I don't know why it gets an inaccuracy. It's very forcing because it's a super attack. White is compelled to trade bishops. So the bot not liking knight d7, but to me it makes all the sense in the world. Bishop takes bishop, king takes bishop. Bishop h3, queen e8. So you don't get a cross pen played against you. Queen c3 check, king g8, and now queen's rook to d1 super attacks the pinned knight. So rook d8 breaks the pin and defends the knight and gets a question mark. I do not understand this. I do not understand. You really want to weaken these dark squares with e6? That is really hard to embrace. I guess the point is the bot doesn't want the knight coming to d5. I'm assuming because Paul Benkő plays knight d5 and gets a big red. Oh, knight e6. Now that's interesting. Let's talk about the move Benkő played, which is, to me, it's okay, even if it's not the best move, it's not worth a big red X because you're hitting this and you're threatening this, right? So it's a strong move. The knight, after all, is going to be pinned here. So you've got a very subtle fork. It's very subtle. But what a move knight e6 would have been. And you see that's threatening queen g7 checkmate. So at least now I understand why knight e6. But actually, I can just take it, though. I can take and then just block with my rook here. And I'm okay. Eval Bar says I'm okay. So, yeah, this move seems less speculative than knight e6. Knight e6 is a very interesting move, but I think from a human perspective, knight d5 makes all the sense in the world. But coming back to the point of pawn to e6 here being recommended, it's to prevent the knight from coming to d5. Well, now Bobby plays pawn to e6, hitting the knight, and Benkő goes ahead, like I said, and plays knight takes the pawn. And this is gorgeous. Double exclam from the bot here. Knight takes the knight, and rook takes the rook. Boom. Now, very quickly, do not play queen takes the knight. For if you play queen takes the knight, then I've got queen takes the A-man, putting the question to your queen, and that forces you to trade queens. You cannot take this undefended knight, because if you play this, look, the queen and the rook are super attacking the enemy rook. So you can't play this because it allows rook takes the rook, which means he'd be forced to trade queens, and black is Jim Dandy. So for that reason, do not play queen takes the knight. Instead, rook takes the rook is the correct and best move. Queen takes the rook, and now queen takes the knight is played. Knight takes the pawn on c4, and queen takes the queen. I thought he should grab this pawn here, not this pawn. This is not a good pawn to grab. Even though it gives you doubled passed pawns, it's really not as good as it might look. Because, okay, let's talk about queen takes a6 first, and it does get a question mark, and the bot does say queen takes the c-man. But I come in here, hit your rookie, and my knight's coming here to f3 after you move your rook. So, but this move, queen takes the knight, I guess I'd still play here though, right? Knight d2. The difference though is you can double up your majors on the c file, right? Anyway, Paul Benkő, rejecting both pawns, trades queens. And we go into a rook-knight versus rook-bishop endgame. The eval bar is dead center. Material is equal. Black does have a passed pawn, but he's not going to be able to hang on to it, especially since that's going to be skewered immediately. Knight to b2, pawn to a4, pawn to c4. Rook to c2, rook to b8 defends, bishop to f1 super attacks, rook to b4 defends, and the players agreed to a draw right there. Both players getting top shelf accuracies, 95.3 for Benkő, 95.7 for Bobby Fischer. Very competitive game, very balanced opening, very well navigated middle game, and very precise end game for both. Both players scoring 2,900 single game rating assessments.